global game.
Emissions. Use the term grandparents. I didn't understand what it meant.
Grandparenting is the allocation of units to any particular sector as an initiation of an emissions trading scheme that allows a sector to adapt over time to the blunt full effects of an emissions trading scheme. Under the current legislation, it is proposed to give to farmers an allocation of 90% of what agriculture emitted in 1995. So that would be the base at which you start. And then under the current emissions trading scheme, in legislation now, those allocations are removed from you at the rate of 8% per year in a straight line. It would have an absolutely devastating impact on the profitability of all our businesses. If you look at Australia, they start with a similar level of grandparenting, but instead of removing that allocation at a rate of 8% every year, they propose to remove it at a rate of 1.3% a year and to renew it regularly. As I said, I don't think we can at this stage preempt what might come from the select committee and what ultimately government might do. But rest assured the Prime Minister has given an absolute guarantee that it won't remove that level of initial gifting of allocation, grandparenting, at a rate that ruins the economics of farming. Essentially, the gifting of those allocations is the balance that a government wants to strike between meeting the liabilities imposed on us as a nation by ratifying Kyoto from the taxpayer pile versus giving it to those people responsible for their emissions in the first place.
Walter. Minister, could I just ask if, in relation to the Animal Health Board, is the government still committed to their contribution towards that scheme?
We'll make a final decision via a full cabinet process. We are waiting for the strategy to be, we're waiting for a proposal to come after the consultation that the Animal Health Board is now having with its stakeholders, of which you and I, as sheep and beef farmers and deer farmers, are of course included. Once we get that, we'll formalise a strategy, and I would then take it through a cabinet process. Can I give you this level of comfort? Over the period of opposition, I chaired the Primary Production Select Committee, and we had the Animal Health Board in to see us on a number of occasions. The point they strongly reinforced to me, and I will not let you down on this, is that in the early 90s that money was removed, in other words, the foot was taken off the throat, and the incidence of TB increased dramatically. I don't want to see that happen when you consider the significant progress we've made as a nation in getting that under control. So I can't give you an absolute commitment to the level of funding from government, because I've got to take it through a process and get colleagues to support me in that. But I can tell you I'm very focused on what would happen if we were to remove funding and then allow the successful progress we've made in reducing the incidence of TB right around New Zealand to be let go and rise again. Thank you, Walter.
Lynn.
Thank you, Minister. You back the farming families in the high country, and that's great. But there are other areas of the country that are facing pressures of regional council restrictions. Taupo farms are trying to farm under restrictions imposed to clean up the lake. If these restrictions are proved to not work, and particularly the Maori landowners are farming at a loss, will you relook at who pays for the cost of cleaning up iconic things like Lake Taupo?
If it's proved not to work, then any government would be irresponsible if it didn't look at the policies that have been imposed. The difficulty, as I understand it with Lake Taupo, is the length of time it will honestly take to prove whether the restrictions are working or not. The suggestion to me is that some of the farm practice initiated 50 and 60 years ago are now having a manifestation on Lake Taupo. There has been central government contribution to Lake Taupo and by the previous government, and I think at a rate of $35 million. I don't think that would necessarily be the end of it if we fail to make progress in maintaining Lake Taupo. It is an absolutely iconic jewel for New Zealand and for our tourism industry. Most of us, I don't think any of us, would happily stand by and see a lake like that ruined for whatever reason, farming, urban pollution, whatever. So if we need to do more, we consider it, but I think your question relates to how long it will take to prove whether what we're doing now will actually prove to be successful. And I understand that it's going to take some time to prove one way or the other.
Congratulations on your support to the agricultural industry.
I'll do it from a vested interest, I've been in the community.
I think we all understand that. When you talked about increase in the prices of meat, I noticed you didn't give any recognition to the change in the value of the exchange rate. Could you give us some confirmation that this government is going to do something about the extremely damaging volatility in the exchange rate, and whether or not you're prepared to do anything about monetary policy?
At this stage, we have no intention whatsoever of changing monetary policy. I agree, the frustration we all experience as exporters with the fluctuation of the exchange rate. It's the erratic fluctuation that catches us all out. Various select committees have spent, I think there's been 3 inquiries into the Reserve Bank Act while I've been in Parliament, and each has looked at alternatives and concluded that at this stage there is no better mechanism than the Reserve Bank Act fixing the OCR, which then allows the market around the exchange rate. Frankly, the level of the dollar at this stage defies belief in my opinion. I'm surprised that it's as strong as it is. But at the end of the day, this country's future does not depend on an artificially low exchange rate. And I don't think that we can argue for that, because at the end of the day, it's the measure of the rest of the world's confidence in New Zealand's performance that actually does determine the exchange rate.
Thank you, Minister. There's lots of issues there we could take, but I just want to ask you, congratulate you on your approach to the high country farmers, but as a farmer on the lower land, we are having the same sort of positions put upon us, but not from central government, but from regional councils. And we're having a huge amount of our property rights being taken away from us, restrictions put upon us that are adversely affecting our economic well-being and the economic well-being of the whole regions, provinces.
I think it's fair to bundle all regional councils into one group and say that they're all not performing well enough. There has been a substantial piece of work now just about through Parliament called the Resource Management Amendment Act Phase 1. And after the election, I will take this opportunity of congratulating Nick Smith for the amount of progress he made with RMA Stage 1. I think it got more in there than we expected to do, and that is already focusing the minds of regional councils. We are now doing the development work around Stage 2, and it's our intention to have a further piece of work in Parliament before we go to the next election around the Resource Management Act, and that will include issues like the establishment of an Environmental Protection Agency, and it will then more clearly define the roles of regional councils. But your point around a restriction on property rights, we need to expand on that. In my mind, in this area, it is relatively difficult to define with accuracy what is a property right. And I start with the premise that no farmer has the right to deliberately pollute the environment.